What's up, everybody? TJ here. Real quick before we get started with the episode, I'm testing out a new feature called Fan Mail, which is where you can actually text me from the episode that you're listening to. So as you're listening to this, go over to the episode description, and right there at the beginning, you're going to see some text that says, send me a text message. Go ahead, click that. Let me know what you think about the podcast so far. Let me know of any questions, concerns, anything you might have. I love to hear from you. So go ahead, hit that up. I'm excited to read your text, and let's get started with the episode.
This is me seeing how it's affected the lives of those that I work with, those that I love, those in other departments, and seeing the positive impact that it has had, and then seeing my friends' lives that have been destroyed. I think we really need to start fighting back with that, saying, I am tired of seeing my friends have bad things happen to them on the job, be it injury, be it mental health injury, and then lose their jobs.
Welcome to the Keep the Promise podcast, where we help build resilient and well-rounded firefighters.
Well, hey, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Keep the Promise podcast. Today we have someone who's fast becoming a good friend of the show. You might have heard her. She was in episode, I want to say 16, and I should know this better.
You gotta look it up.
I do have to look it up. I am such a horrible
Should have gotten someone to do your homework.
I know.
You could just say she was in a previous episode. I mean, I don't think you need to look it all the way up.
Yeah, I guess I can put that on the show notes.
I'm just saying.
14, episode 14. I knew it wasn't even a number.
It was impressive.
Oh,
Way to pull that one out of nowhere. That's a solid start right there.
Okay, so I have here with me Stephanie White. She was a guest in episode 14 where we talked about the realities of being a female in the fire service, especially having to deal with some of the stuff that she dealt with over a 20-year career. And today we're going to talk about something a little bit happier.
Happier is one way to put it.
A little more exciting. I don't know. Or maybe this is what lands me at the chief's office, because we're talking about pot.
The official term, sir, is medical cannabis.
Okay, fine. Thank you for deflating my sails.
I actually just refer to it as medical marijuana, and during a conversation I had with someone who is much more educated on the subject than me, she kept correcting me. Medical cannabis. Medical cannabis.
I like medical marijuana. It just sounds so much
medical
cooler.
Marijuana does have a ring because cannabis just...
Pretentious.
It sounds hippie.
Yeah.
Hippie, pretentious, something other than what I think of when I think of pot. To use your word.
Medical pot.
Medical pot.
Well, listen, thank you for doing this. Welcome back to the show. I appreciate you taking the time to let me pick your brain about this stuff.
Hey, thanks for having me.
So for those people who have not listened to episode 14 just yet, give us a little bit of an intro about you. You don't have to go full in depth like last time. Just give us a little something. How long you been in? What you've been up to? Your little podcast, just a quick teaser.
Quick life update. So I have been in the fire service for those who missed episode 14. I think we've plugged that enough, TJ, for people to go back and listen. I have been in the fire service for 20 years, 18 years career, and I had 2 years volunteer before that. Life update, just working on different projects. I do writing on the side through fire engineering and have a podcast with them. Check it out on there. And then I do some teaching on firefighters and pregnancy and postpartum, along with medical marijuana and some other things. So that's life right now.
Seems busy.
Seems boring. But it's summertime, so I'm sure I'll find some chaos.
So a little bit of everything.
A little bit of everything.
How'd you stumble into the medical cannabis?
Medical cannabis.
I don't even know which.
Don't say it again. It's giving me a complex. So I have a couple friends who are up in Pittsburgh, and they, I believe, 2018, they got it in their collective bargaining agreement that they could use medical marijuana. It's tightly regulated for them. They are one of, I might be wrong, but last I checked, there were only 2 departments in the nation that had it in their collective bargaining agreement. So that's a different way of doing it from how FDNY and other people have done it. And we'll get into it. So they had it, they have access to it, and I injured my spine in 2018 twice, and then again in 2019, and was really down for the count and in a lot of pain. I was told that if I made one wrong move, I would be essentially paralyzed from the waist down.
Yikes.
So it was really kind of trying to come up with a game plan to be able to do rehab safely and pain-free, because it had gotten to the point where I couldn't even sit without being in pain, much less move, couldn't walk very far. And it was really an issue because then if I can't walk, I can't even do rehab. Didn't want to do any kind of narcotic pain med because with the way our life is, to back up a little bit, the craziest thing about COVID to me was how quickly I think all of us became addicted to alcohol. So that was very eye-opening to me, how fast, even without an addictive personality, everybody was kind of getting addicted to some things. So didn't want to do narcotics. So really started to do my research into that as a potential pain medication or just something to help me help the muscles around the injury relax. And it just kind of took off from there because I think everybody was so nervous about being the one to talk about it out loud because obviously, and rightfully so, people are worried they're going to get a target on their back with their departments, their upper management. It's my goal to just ride the back step for 20 years. I have no desire to get promoted. So for me, that's an easy sword to fall on, to talk about it. So that's how that all came about. It was just a personal need for something, which I still don't have access to, but that's how the research started.
Okay.
Long-winded answer. Sorry.
No, that's what I wanted. Better than like a yes or no answer. It's like pulling teeth when you talk to people like that. So Pittsburgh, let's talk about, because they've kind of been leading the way here.
They have been. They actually they taught a really good course for the first time for the IFF's Alts Conference. And then I think they'll be teaching it again next January. And they have a very cohesive group of guys who, they're really good with policy. They pay attention to what's going on in the nation. And then you have one of them who is really Sean O'Leary, who's just a genius when it comes to understanding the biology of, here's where we will use the word cannabis and the effects. And so they have a really cohesive way of teaching it in terms of, listen, here's what you can get in trouble with in terms of policy, in terms of misuse, testing, all that. And then they have, I think, found a really good way of teaching people, no, here are the ways it can help. Here's how you can't overdose on it, just all this stuff. So they have a cohesive package. They are available for anyone who ever reaches out to them. They're really good about teaching people how to set up a policy for their department. Yeah, they're leading the way with that.
And I think, we also know a couple of people who are like John from Rescue One CBD, who have, John's definitely had a target on his back, but also a wealth of knowledge when it comes to this topic. And I want to, you mentioned something about like the intoxication levels and the overdoses. I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the issue that we're really running into here is that we have no way of quantifying if I'm high, how high am I?
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, you can give me a breathalyzer and you can confirm how buzzed I am.
So here's the argument I make with people. And I try not to compare marijuana to alcohol, but I will in this situation. I could drink something like, is it vodka or gin that has no smell?
I think it's vodka.
I don't drink, to quote Ron Swanson, clear alcohols are for rich women on a diet. I don't drink either one. I think it's vodka. Doesn't have a smell after you drink it. I can drink a shit ton of that, go to work and be drunk. I'm not going to have that smell. It is your job as my captain to pay attention to the fact that I'm falling down drunk. Guess what? I might not smell like it, but clearly something's going on that's impairing my ability to do the job, right? Same thing with any other substance that can be abused. Our shift commanders should be paying attention to their people. So if I come in and it's not peak allergy season and I've got red eyes or I just seem out of it or I'm draggy, whatever, that's when you have a conversation with me and say, Stephanie, what's going on? And then you go on from there. But I hate that argument because that argument assumes that our shift commanders are completely inept people who don't pay attention to their people.
But I think that's how policy gets written, right? I think we see the more and more we spend time in the fire service, we try to structure things in such a way that the first line officers literally have their hands tied behind their back.
We castrate them.
Yeah. Good word. Kind of painful sounding, but yeah.
No, we do. We take away really their ability to create an environment for the shift by leading. I mean, if you can't even look at me and decide if I'm high and how you can deal with it and what you're going to do with it, what kind of environment can you create? You know, you're taking your officers and you're weakening them in the eyes of their shift. So departments that do that over policy everything instead of letting their leaders lead. That's a whole different subject. Gotten off track there.
Okay, so, and I completely lost my train of thought. Oh, I wanted to talk about overdoses, right? We've run the drunks. We've run the people who have the issues that, you know, they're shaking until they get their next drink, or they are just like full blown like alcohol withdrawal, which is horrifying to experience. What about weed? I'm sorry, medical marijuana, cannabis. I need to change my slang here.
What about pot?
Yeah, what about pot?
So, geez, paramedic here for 19 years. I've never seen anybody OD on pot ever. I've gotten 2 pot-related calls, and one was in a really, really rich area. Young man of much money had smoked pot for the first time, and when his parents traveled, and even the cop was laughing because he couldn't stop coughing. And that is what he called 911 for. I think I did that. And then one other time, it was a guy using marijuana for the first time, and he felt like his heart was racing. And that's it. I mean, I'm in a high drug area. I cannot tell you how many times a day, a week or two, or we run into PCP, K2, just everything under the sun. People like to do cocktails in my area. You don't run people who are high on marijuana causing issues. So already, if you want to take it to the street level, you're not going to go out and seeing anybody OD. Hold on, I'm trying to look up a number. It's absolutely hilarious.
Yeah, what about toxicity? Not toxicity, but like, I go back to like LD50 from the hazmat days and...
Well, a person would need to consume 1,500 pounds of cannabis in 15 minutes to reach fatal levels. I don't think even Cheech and Chong could have managed that. That's good math right there, buddy. Good math.
I know, thank you. I'm just trying to figure out, like, if the best way would be to, like, do you just pump it all into one room and, like, suffocate, or do you just start eating edibles?
The CDC doesn't even have a category for cannabis deaths because there have never been a single reported cannabis death. So that's what we're looking at. So stop right there. We're going to take the conversation a different direction. What did we just have going on in Ohio and West Virginia? We had mass amounts of people dying from prescription opioid abuse. One of the big things that struck me when I started researching it for pain was at the same time the lawsuits were coming out against the major pharmaceuticals. I'm not some conspiracy theorist, anti-pharmaceutical person, but hearing them say, oh yeah, we did design these products to be addictive, was just an absolute jaw dropper. Just like I mentioned with COVID, I remember, so I have 2 sons, and I got the wonderful joy of homeschooling them during COVID.
Boy.
And it got to the point where it was like at the end of the night, I needed to pour a couple fingers of bourbon just to relax. And I think the second week of doing that, it really hit me that I had a moment where I was like, okay, it's time. You need your bourbon. And that was very eye-opening as to how quickly I became just really reliant on something. So I can't imagine And I wasn't even abusing it. I wasn't getting drunk, anything. It was just a cocktail at night. I can't imagine being put on a pain medication that's designed to make me addicted to it when I already have a lifestyle that leaves me open for addiction or sleep deprivation, our social interaction, lack of. We often don't get to relax in the ways that normal population does. We stay in this state of high alert. All these things that can lead us down the road of addiction very easily if we're not incredibly careful. And I think so many of us are so good about guarding ourselves, and then you throw us the curveball, giving us something we assume is going to help us. We take it and we get addicted, and it's not our freaking fault. Like, that's insane. So to me, seeing what went on in West Virginia, Ohio, hearing them admit that, and then knowing that I've never run someone who's ever died from marijuana, it's just, come on. Like, let's start using some common sense here.
I don't think we have that in the fire service. I think we still have the way it's always been done, and that should be it. And I know, I mean, I don't know how your department is, but I know that there's some very staunch haters, like whatever the very strong opposite of supporters is in mine, and in many of them, which is why seeing the FDNY come up with what they did, back at the end of 2022, that they're like, hey, we're not going to be testing for marijuana for pre-employment or during randoms, or was it physicals? I forget which one it was. One of the two, they basically said, hey, if we don't have a reason to test you, we're not going to. And it was very interesting watching how polarizing that was for the fire service, because hate it or love it, we do a lot of things based on what New York does. And I took a dive into the comments on the social media sites for FDNY, which is a horrible mistake, but it was World War III starting in there.
Oh, no, people were...
both pro and cons. Like, yeah. The stoners were in there, like, ready to actually, like, stone somebody. I'm like, Jesus Christ, guys. And then, like, the boomers, or what is it that Seth calls them, the dinosaurs, they were in there basically saying that we had regressed and that this was akin to, like, genocide type thing, one of the dudes said.
So here's another thing that I'm going to challenge listeners who are on the fence with to do their research on. Hit up the old Dr. Google. I cannot believe how quickly doctors throw medicine at us. It's very shocking to me how so many doctors, a friend will go get an appointment for something, and I'll say, hey, what ended up happening? What's the follow-up? Oh, they put me on this cocktail of medications. And it's like, geez, fuck. And I'll be looking through a lot of the behavioral health medications that they put us on are designed to affect your hypothalamus. So it affects your sweating. It's designed, some of them are designed to affect your heat regulation. And they will even say on there, do not be in high heat environments while taking this medication. I don't know if they just don't hear us when we say what it is we do for a living. But then there are other medications that they can put us on where if you are not consistently taking that medication every day, you're going to get into some trouble. And if you're taking it for mental health reasons, or just putting someone in a disaster situation, let's say you get stuck working a 48, 60-hour shift, 60 hours away from your medication, we're going to be dealing with a world of behavioral issues potentially. Versus, it's again, maybe taking something that has very few side effects, the addiction capabilities are low, just all of it, and maybe considering that for our people, one ingredient versus
a mix.
Right? It's just...
that's been engineered to make us addicted.
Mm-hmm. You need to have a certain therapeutic threshold of it in your blood all the time with those cocktails. Just all... it's a little bit insane. I think my biggest thing that I would tell any department is sit down and write out your reasons of no. And then write out your reasons of why your members would benefit from it. See which one outlists the other, and it's going to be your benefits. And then look at your reasons for no, and then go find me some science that continues to point to no. Because I guarantee with all the improvements that have been made in testing technology, everything, your no's are going to be knocked down pretty quickly.
Hey friends, I want to take a quick moment to ask you to support the show by leaving a rating and a review on your favorite platform. Your support means the world to us, and it helps spread the message to even more people. We've gotten thousands and thousands of listeners, and those high ratings help our show become more discoverable, allowing us to reach even more listeners and make an even greater impact. So, if you've enjoyed what you heard so far, please take a moment to leave a rating and a review. It only takes a few seconds, and it makes a huge difference. Thank you so much, and now let's get back to the show.
So I want to get into the policy side of it and kind of how we affect change, but let's go to like hypothetical land first. In an ideal world.
I need more caffeine for that.
In like, utopian Stephanie's idea of the fire service and the world. How would it work with us being able to use medical marijuana, cannabis, pot in the fire service? Like, what would it look like?
I think there are two different ways you can do it. One is the way Pittsburgh is doing it, which is you get your medical marijuana prescription. You have to buy that product from a dispensary. And in Pennsylvania, those dispensaries are incredibly tightly regulated. So you buy your product from there. You cannot smoke it. You cannot vape it. You cannot do any of those things that are going to be harmful to your lungs. Not only are you going to be creating carcinogens, but there's, just a whole mix of things when it comes to vaping. So you're not doing a harmful ingestion. That's step one. You're normally buying oils, tinctures. You have to give just like with any other prescription that could be mood altering, you got to give it to your medical resource officer. At any point, your medical resource officer can ask you for receipts. So if I test and I have a certain amount of medical marijuana in my system, they're going to say, hey, Stephanie, show us your receipts. So it's got to be safe, and they've ensured that it's safe through all those different ways. The other big thing is testing, right? So Department of Transportation just came out and they have set a new best practices, which is, hey, we're going to start swabbing people. It's the most efficient way to do it. So I think that's another thing that will be key in all of this is them making an official, hey, we now have a way of testing, because I think everybody's been all across the board with that, whether it be blood, whether it be urine. Most people do urine, which you're going to be reading urine for like 30 days. It's going to be a long time. So that's what Pittsburgh has done to maintain that it's safe. You're not going into your buddy's backyard and lighting up a joint that he gave you, and that way, God forbid, you don't know what's in it. You pop hot for something else that it's been laced with, well, then you've potentially ruined it for everybody else, right? So no, we're going to regulate it a certain way so we don't ruin it for ourselves, because we're firefighters and we have a wonderful habit of...
Not us.
Yeah, this is why we can't have nice things, right? So they've really regulated it in that way. The other way is there are companies out there who, if you're not familiar with the concept of a pain management clinic, they are clinics that really tightly regulate essentially your routine with, what's the word I'm looking for? With narcotics. So if you have to be on long-term narcotics, they help you to not get addicted. They help you get the most out of it. You do tests to see what time of day you take it and have the best absorption rate, all that stuff. And they will do the same for medical marijuana. And I like that option for departments that are absolutely terrified of it, to say, hey, okay, this is a medication. Let's treat it as such. Let's let our people have access to one of these companies where they will have access to behavioral health care all the time. They will have access to an actual doctor, just all these different ways of legitimizing it. I think that's a good baby step for areas that don't have any departments around them that have started to use it.
And I like that you mentioned the the other resources, because I think this has to be a multi-pronged approach to mental health, to mental well-being, to taking care of our people, because an oil and edible, a joint, though it's bad for the lungs, like that's not going to be the panacea. That's not going to be the one-shot solution, that silver bullet for fixing all our issues. It has to be that approach as like, hey, your department cares. Hey, also you care enough to get a hold of maybe a therapist or be talking to somebody. And a lot of the things that I know we've talked about in our own respective podcasts that our friends have been talking about, that we have to use a word, holistically approach
But it's accurate.
this issue when it comes to our people, because I feel that we're like 10 years behind, if not more, in a lot of things in the fire service, especially when it comes to...
I mean, look at the military. I mean, they're already using psychedelics for PTSD.
Right.
I mean, just the things that are going on. And we're so far behind with it. You mentioned John from Rescue 1 CBD. It blows my mind that he has gotten any kind of pushback or blowback for just CBD, when what is almost every freaking athlete out there using for inflammation, for sleep?
Right.
It's just, we have, okay, granted, athletes are not the best example maybe of behavior and all that.
But it's what our people watch, right?
but-
They're the role models.
But in terms of legitimate athletes, which you're reminding us all the time that we're tactical athletes.
Right.
We need to maintain a certain level of physicality and all that, which we do. It's hilarious how fire departments say it. You're going to tell me I'm a tactical athlete. Allow me to freaking care for my broken down body that gets abused daily in an appropriate way. Oh, I'm sorry. You want me to take a bunch of Ambien or Xanax to fall asleep versus CBD?
CBD, right.
And John, I mean, he's thrown away batches if they have any THC in them. He tightly tests and regulates that stuff. So it's just CBD. It's THC free. And the fact that he's gotten crap for that is just...
It's very indicative of the people that we deal with.
It's just... I mean, we really need to pull back and say, our firefighters are getting run over by the health truck. Okay? We really are. And backed over by it. Let's give our people better options than what are on the table. It's really all it is. Give your people options.
Not everything has to be an opioid. Not everything has to be some sort of marijuana, THC. It's just, I mean, we know the people who self-medicate, if you will. We all know them. And I think they're making that, and not recreationally, and I think they're making that conscious decision of like, hey, kind of hurting right now and I might be putting my career at risk. But which was better, that opioid or that little green plant?
Right? I mean, I can think of people in my life who use medical marijuana for mental health reasons, and just the difference it has made in their life and giving them that ability to relax. The other thing is, okay, let's look at the staffing crisis right now. It's nationwide. It's not just our area. It's nationwide. What is your mental state like if you come off a 48-hour shift? Because the overtime is rampant right now. So you can work 48 hours, take 12 hours off, and go straight into another 48. Or let's say you do a cycle of that. 48-12, 48-12. And even that's not, there are people who do that, but let's be a little more average. 48 off, 48 on, 24-hour off, 24-hour on, 36, like some variation of that, some ridiculous amount of added hours. But that's what a lot of people are doing in the summertime to not get held. They're playing the game. Can you imagine when you finally get off that hell block of hours, how long it's going to take you to come down? And you and I have talked about this concept before. Coming down off that state of fight or flight. That life or death. So many people loved that. That life or death, meaning you have been in charge of making life or death decisions. Doesn't mean we're about to hit life or death. It means you've carried this certain level of responsibility for those you serve. I mean, what are you going to do? Grab a beer first thing in the morning? Come on. It's not always going to work.
There's going to be people
situation.
cheering right now as soon as you said that.
But that's been the norm is, all right, I have to do something to take the edge off. I have to come back into a state of reality. I have to relax. Most of the time it's breakfast beer.
Mm-hmm.
How healthy of a precedence are we setting? And then for those who can't do that at that moment, because whatever reason, their option is just suck it up, buttercup, try to figure it out. Why would we not give our people an option?
Right. Just to get that sleep. I mean, I don't do 48s anymore. I think that I took years of my life doing that, and it turned me into an absolute monster because I would get home and not only am I exhausted from a 48, but now depending on where I did it, I might only have 24 hours left before I have to show up again. So now I'm getting angry about this. And it was just like 5 days just shot because I was in my head. And even less overtime than that. We used to do trainings, like little tech rescue trainings on certain days, full like 8-10 hours. What I would do is I would, 24 hours on, do the training, and then go back to the firehouse, shower, and hit up my local watering hole where I blew all the overtime money on beers and shots of Grand Marnier.
Ugh.
Yeah, it was. People will know. People will know the place. And there were a lot of bad decisions. There were a lot of
I just take shots of Grand. Hey, but keep talking.
This place feeds them to you if you tip well or if they like. Yeah, it was not good. Like, I'm getting queasy just thinking about it. But that was a good way to relax. You would get to that point, and that's bastardizing called that therapeutic threshold of a certain amount of shots and beers where you're just feeling great. And then anything more, and it's just downhill. And we see it a lot, and we don't take care. We don't recognize that little peak before we just go into the abyss. It's
hilarious how we're kicking and screaming about marijuana, right? But alcohol is so accepted. And just the ways that it ravages your body. I say that as I, stare at my bourbon cart. The ways that it ravages your body, the calls we've run. We've all seen people die from alcohol.
Oh, yeah.
And it's so funny to me that because that's the way it's always been, we're going to accept that versus the new guy over here.
Right. And which I think kind of makes me excited in a way, because if you look back throughout history and you see the innovators, you see the people who have made, how many people told Henry Ford that nobody would ever be able to ride in cars? How many people decried the train because they said the human body was not going to be able to go at those speeds? We're talking like early steam locomotives, and now we're shooting people into the space at multiple times the speed of sound type thing. So as a mega nerd, that kind of gives me hope that we are hopefully in that cusp of change. And eventually that leadership that we have in the fire department is going to start going by the wayside, because it's going to be our generation, right? It's going to be us degenerates who are now going to be in charge of policy. And we're hoping.
Well, I think hand in hand is the other conversation we're not having, which is work-life balance. Not to sound too conspiracy, I'm going to put on my Stag hat. We're going to play this part just for him, because I feel like this is something Stag would say.
We should call him.
I mean, is the fire service at this point, because of staffing, let's not talk about work-life balance, because we need you to be work. We need you to be signing up for all the overtime possible. Like, we need you to forget about the balance part and just focus on the work part. Hand in hand with that medical marijuana conversation needs to be the work-life balance conversation, because those two roads are completely parallel. If we're not talking about using it for pain medication and for behavioral health issues, we're talking about using it as an alternative for sleep, for anxiety, for just relaxation overall. We have to be talking about that. We're not talking about that. We're not talking about what are true healthy hours in a week worked. Forget this whole, well, you can safely work this many hours in a row as long as you have this many hours off. We should be looking at how many hours somebody's worked in a week. Because I know, and I've played the game. I can play the game. I can work a 48-hour shift. I can go teach at the academy all day and then go work a shift at night.
Oh, yeah, because you had that time off out of the field.
Correct. Explain to me, especially if for somebody who's doing the suppression side, doing hot burns all day long with the recruits, stuff like that, guys who do that. I mean, we're not tracking the hours people are working in a week. We don't care about work-life balance. Let's face it, we don't. So that needs to be the conversation number one before we can even touch medical marijuana, because until we get them to care about our work-life balance, why would they care about making sure we have access to something that helps us get into that healthy balance if we can't come off the work part?
I had never considered that part.
Yeah.
I'd never considered that.
It's my inner stack right there.
Shout out to him. So, we keep taking shots at the Chiefs, the dinosaurs. Let's talk about policy. Say that I want to approach my department and be like, yo, it's 2023. Let's do something. Let's explore it without getting my head completely bitten off by a chief officer. How should I do that? How should I approach my leadership to try to at least float this idea to them?
So the first thing I would do is I would come up with a packet. There's a packet I have for different departments in Virginia that I'll send them to help them educate their departments or boards, supervisors, town councils, whatever. Put all the information together and create an educational resource for them. Make them have to sit down and learn all the latest science. Because if you leave it up to Dr. Google for them to just look, they're going to find the first thing that is negative and they're going to say, nope, see here. No, find the accurate science, find the latest studies. Hopkins has been doing a ton of studies, MIT, Harvard and MIT are really doing a bunch of studies right now. And I think a lot of the white papers came down the pike in this month, because there have been a couple I've been waiting for. So I need to go back and look at those. But they got grants specifically for that are really starting to finally bear fruit. Put all that together. Put together the local policies that you can find. Prince William County here in Virginia, FDNY, all the places that have taken it out of their testing. Pull those policies together. Pull together Pittsburgh's policy and any other department that might have language in their contract. Kind of give them a bevy of, this is starting to become a thing. Give them a picture of departments are doing this. By the way, you're having a hard time with recruitment and retention. If the departments around you are starting to remove testing,
oh yeah,
guess where all the new kids on the block are gonna go work, by the way. So use that in there as well. But put together an educational plan for your people. I mean, really think that through. Obviously, you can always contact me and I'll shoot over what little I have, but find those resources. Find a way to make them have to look at it as something viable. Flood them with that information. Don't give them the option to just look up one negative thing. Because they will.
Oh, without a doubt. Without a doubt. I think we've covered quite a bit. Any parting thoughts?
I got a lot of them.
Okay, perfect. We're adding part 2 to this podcast episode.
No, it's just, listen, and this is coming from, I'm a mom. I have never used any kind of cannabis product. I became a medic right out of high school, and I was a total freaking nerd in high school, so I've never used it, which is why I'm kind of going to keep it that way until I'm done with the fight, so that way I can look chiefs and other people in the eye and say, listen, this isn't me because I want to use it on my off-duty days. This is me seeing how it's affected the lives of those that I work with, those that I love, those in other departments, and seeing the positive impact that it has had and then seeing my friends' lives that have been destroyed by alcohol. I think we really need to start fighting back with that, saying, I am tired of seeing my friends have bad things happen to them on the job, be it injury, be it mental health injuries, and then lose their jobs to alcohol abuse. I've seen nurses and cops who are amazing people get back injuries, end up with an opioid addiction, and it go sideways as hell. And it wasn't their fault. It was an addictive pill that they were given that they were told was safe for them to take. I think we really need to, as a fire service, stand up and say we deserve better. We deserve a better option for anxiety, for a non-alcoholic alternative, for pain, and just fight for it, because I think it is something that can change our quality of life. And I think the other thing is for departments that have gotten it, police yourselves, police your buddies. Make sure that we maintain access to this. Don't let somebody start to skirt that line. Protect that. Protect it just like you would if you saw them coming in drunk to work, you know? Don't let them do that if you start to see them being reckless with it. Because I think everybody's waiting for the first mistake to happen in one of these departments. So don't let that happen. Don't let us, well, not us because we don't have the benefit, but don't let departments that have that benefit lose it because somebody does something stupid. It's time we police our own.
Yeah, we talk about being our brother's keeper. I think that part plays perfectly into it. Well, Stephanie, where else can we find your work, your information, your writing? I mean, like you mentioned, you pretty much do it all.
Did not say I do it all.
No, I made that assumption. But I mean, you're right. I just speak into a microphone, so you got me there.
You know what the easiest way to find me is Instagram, that paperwork firefighter. Don't spell it firefighter, it's just FF. And then from there, there's a link tree on there that'll take you everywhere. But just Google Stephanie White firefighter, and I'm sure something will pop up.
Yeah, I'll put the link to your podcast, the 5 After Midnight, and I'll throw the link for your fire engineering stuff.
Hey, thanks for talking about this.
Of course.
It's a subject I think people are still waiting for people to fall on the sword first before they address it. So congrats on that fall, buddy.
Right.
Hopefully it didn't hurt too much.
Right. I'll be recording this from the chief's office next time. Be like, hey, chief, you want to record a podcast? As I'm signing like my resignation paperwork or something. Well, thanks for taking the time. I appreciate you. It's been good. And those of you listening out there, start that conversation. And those fighting that fight, it's like you said, we deserve better. So I think there's going to be change on the horizon. There's people at least talking about it, which is the first step.
Just start that conversation. Start the education.
Hey everyone, it's TJ here from Keep the Promise. As you know, this podcast is all about helping firefighters become more resilient and well-rounded so that they can be a force for good within their fire department and their community. But today I want to talk to you about something that's just as important, and that is supporting firefighters who are going through tough times. When one of our fellow firefighters is off work because they have to go to the Center for Excellence, they have to go to rehab, they have mental health issues, or they have other health issues, it really takes away their support system and it wreaks havoc on their finances and their family's finances. And many times, these brothers and sisters are left to struggle alone, away from their support system and the people who love them without the resources they need to recover. That's why I'm setting a bold new goal. And that is to reach 150 total patrons on Patreon so that we can start a fund to help firefighters and their families during these challenging times. And I need your help to make it happen. With your support on Patreon, we'll be able to provide financial assistance to firefighter families who are battling things like addiction, depression, and cancer. We're going to help alleviate the financial strain that can come with being away from the fire department
so that our brothers and sisters can focus on healing and recovering. Now, reaching 150 total patrons is a big goal, but I believe that we can do it together. And when we do, we'll be able to make a real difference in the lives of those who serve and protect alongside us. So, if you're not already a patron, I invite you to join us today. Head over to joinkeepthepromise.com and sign up today. Again, that is joinkeepthepromise.com. And if you already are a patron, thank you so much for your support. You'll be receiving some exclusive rewards and perks as a way of saying thanks. Together, let's show our fellow firefighters that we've got their back just like they always have ours. Thank you for listening. Let's get started with the episode.